Listen closely. The quality of your relationships is not a matter of luck. It is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. Before we search for green flags in others, we must become one. Before we ask for safety, consistency, and love, we must learn how to offer these qualities inwardly. This is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is about awareness. And it is about courage. Many of us were taught, quietly, subtly, over years, that love is something we earn by being agreeable, by shrinking our needs, by enduring discomfort. We learn to confuse intensity with intimacy, familiarity with safety, attachment with love. And so we carry these lessons into adulthood, wondering why the same patterns repeat, why our hearts keep choosing what harms us. But here is the truth that changes everything. We do not attract what we want. We attract what feels familiar to our nervous system, and familiarity is shaped by our earliest experiences of connection. If chaos felt normal, calm can feel boring. If neglect felt like love, consistency can feel suspicious. If self-abandonment kept us safe, self-honoring can feel dangerous. So the work is not to blame ourselves, but to understand ourselves. Cultivating your inner green flag begins with curiosity instead of judgment. When you notice yourself drawn to someone unavailable, controlling, or dismissive, pause. Ask not, what's wrong with me, but what part of me learned that this is love? Compassion opens doors that shame never will. A green flag person is not someone without wounds. It is someone who knows their wounds and takes responsibility for them. Likewise, becoming a green flag does not mean you are healed. It means you are healing consciously. This healing happens in the body as much as in the mind. When you learn to notice tension, breath, and emotional signals, you begin to regulate your nervous system. You become less reactive, more responsive. You stop confusing anxiety with chemistry. You start recognizing peace as attraction. Boundaries are another green flag, especially the ones you set with yourself. You notice when something feels wrong and you listen. You say no without over-explaining. You allow disappointment rather than betraying your truth. And slowly something remarkable happens. You stop chasing connection, and you start allowing it. Healthy relationships are drawn to clarity. They are drawn to authenticity. They are drawn to people who can sit with discomfort without fleeing, who can speak honestly without attacking, who can stay present without losing themselves. When you meet your own needs with kindness, you stop demanding that others fill your emptiness. When you learn to soothe yourself, you stop clinging. When you respect your limits, you stop accepting disrespect. This is not a checklist. It is a practice. You will stumble. Old patterns will resurface. That does not mean you are failing. It means you are human. Each moment of awareness is a green flag. Each act of self-trust is a green flag. Each time you choose honesty over approval, rest over proving, truth over performance, you are signaling to the world what kind of love you are available for, and the world responds. Not all at once, not magically, but unmistakably. So here is your call to action. Today, choose one small act of self-respect. Speak the truth you've been swallowing. Rest where you usually push. Leave the conversation, the situation, or the relationship that asks you to abandon yourself. Do it not to attract someone else, but to come home to yourself. Because when you become a safe place to land, love no longer has to hurt to feel real. And when you cultivate your inner green flag, healthy relationships don't need to be chased. They recognize you, they meet you, and they stay. From the moment we enter the world, our nervous system is quietly taking notes. Long before we have language, long before we can reason or choose, our bodies are learning what connection feels like. They are learning whether closeness is safe or overwhelming, whether expressing need brings comfort or rejection, whether love arrives with warmth or with tension. These lessons do not live in our thoughts, they live in our muscles, our breath, our heartbeat. And later, when we call something attraction, we often mistake recognition for desire. What feels familiar can pull us in with extraordinary force, even when it hurts. This is why so many people find themselves asking the same painful question again and again. Why do I keep choosing the same kind of relationship? The answer is rarely a lack of intelligence or willpower. It is not that you don't know better. It is that your body learned very early on what love required of you. Maybe it required vigilance. Maybe it required vigilance. Maybe it required silence. Maybe it required pleasing, adapting, disappearing, or staying strong when you were breaking inside. Whatever it was, that strategy once made sense. It helped you survive emotionally, and survival strategies, even outdated ones, are incredibly persistent. When the nervous system equates intensity with connection, calm can feel unsettling. When unpredictability was normal, steadiness can feel foreign. When affection had to be earned, effort can feel romantic. None of this means there is something wrong with you. It means your body has been doing its job too well, protecting you according to an old map. The trouble is that this map may no longer lead where you want to go. The shift begins not with force, but with awareness. Instead of trying to override your patterns, you begin to study them. You notice who activates you. not with criticism, but with interest. You notice the rush, the tightness, the longing, the anxiety. You notice how quickly your mind starts to explain away red flags, how easily you override your own discomfort. And rather than asking, "Why am I like this?" you ask, "What does this remind my body of?" That single question opens a door. It transforms self-blame into self-understanding. Curiosity is profoundly regulating. When you observe yourself without judgment, your nervous system receives a new message. You are not in danger for noticing the truth. Many people learned early that awareness itself was unsafe, that naming feelings led to conflict, dismissal, or punishment. So they learned to disconnect, to intellectualize, to normalize pain. Reclaiming curiosity gently reverses that lesson. It allows you to stay present with discomfort long enough to learn from it, rather than being driven by it. As this awareness deepens, you may begin to recognize that attraction is not a command, it is a signal, and signals can be interpreted. Just because something feels strong does not mean it is good for you. Just because someone feels familiar does not mean they are healthy. This is not about suppressing desire, but about understanding its origins. When you can say, "This feels compelling because it echoes something old," you create a small but powerful space between impulse and action. In that space, choice becomes possible. This work also requires tenderness toward the younger parts of you that learned these patterns in the first place. They were not foolish. They were adaptive. If the love once came inconsistently, of course you learned to chase it. If emotional safety was scarce, of course you learned to scan for danger. If your needs overwhelmed the people you depended on, of course you learned to minimize them. These responses were intelligent solutions to limited options. Honoring that truth softens the inner battle and allows healing to unfold without violence toward the self. As you bring awareness to these dynamics, your body may resist. Growth often feels unfamiliar, can register as threat. You might feel bored with people who are kind. You might feel restless when things are stable. You might feel suspicious of ease. This does not mean something is wrong with the connection. It means your nervous system is learning a new language. And like any new language, it can feel awkward and effortful at first. The practice here is not to rush yourself, but to stay present, to notice the urge to create drama or distance, and to pause, to breathe, to remind yourself that safety does not need to be earned through suffering. Over time, as you repeatedly choose experiences that are respectful and consistent, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. What once felt dull may start to feel grounding. What once felt electric may start to feel exhausting. This is not a loss of passion. It is a return to regulation. You may also notice grief arising. There is grief in realizing how long you have equated love with pain. There is grief in acknowledging what you did not receive. This grief is not a setback. It is evidence of honesty. When you allow yourself to feel it, rather than rushing past it, you loosen the grip of the past. The body releases what it no longer has to defend against. In this process, patience is essential. Patterns formed over years do not dissolve in moments. Each time you notice yourself before reacting, each time you choose to stay with your feelings rather than abandon yourself, something shifts. You are teaching your nervous system that connection can be safe, that awareness is not dangerous, that you no longer need to repeat old stories to feel alive. The change may be subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but it accumulates, and one day you realize that what you were drawn to has changed, not because you forced it to, but because your body has learned that it deserves something different. Becoming a safe person to be in relationship with begins where many people least expect it, with boundaries. Not the rigid defensive kind that shut people out, but the living responsive kind that signals self-respect. Boundaries are often misunderstood as walls, when in truth they are the doors and windows of our inner world. They tell us when to let someone in, when to step back, and when to protect what is tender. Without them, we may appear accommodating or easygoing, but internally we are often flooded, resentful, or quietly disappearing. Many people learned early that having boundaries threatened connection. If saying no led to withdrawal of love, if expressing limits caused anger or shame, the nervous system adapted by prioritizing attachment over authenticity. The message became clear. Staying connected required self-erasure. Over time, this erasure can feel so normal that we mistake it for generosity or kindness. But generosity that costs you your integrity is not generosity, it is survival. Healthy boundaries begin with self-attunement. You cannot protect what you cannot sense. This means learning to notice subtle signals in the body. The tightening in the chest when you agree too quickly. The heaviness in the stomach when something feels off. The fatigue that follows interactions where you overextend. These signals are not inconveniences. They are information. When you ignore them repeatedly, the body often has to speak louder through anxiety, numbness, or illness. Setting boundaries with yourself is often the hardest and most transformative part of this work. It means noticing when you push past your limits to be liked, when you override your needs to avoid conflict, when when you stay silent to keep the peace. It means interrupting patterns of self-betrayal that once kept you safe. Each time you pause and choose to honor what you feel, even in small ways, you reinforce a new internal contract. I will not abandon myself. This internal boundary changes how you show up with others. You become clearer, not harsher. You communicate earlier, not explosively. You stop expecting people to read your mind, because you are listening to it yourself. And when someone crosses a line, you are less likely to freeze or appease, because you are already oriented toward your own experience. Boundaries, in this sense, are not reactions. They are expressions of self-connection. There is often fear here. Fear of being too much. Fear of being rejected. Fear that honesty will cost you the relationship. These fears are not irrational. They are rooted in memory. But when you consistently choose silence over truth, the relationship you preserve is often one in which you are not fully present. Over time, this absence creates distance anyway, just a quieter, lonelier kind. Boundaries risk conflict, but they also create the possibility of genuine intimacy. Responsibility is another core aspect of being a green flag. This does not mean taking responsibility for other people's feelings, but for your own inner world. It means recognizing that while you may not be responsible for your wants, you are responsible for how you tend to them. Blaming past experiences or other people for current behaviors may feel relieving in the short term, but it keeps you stuck. Responsibility, when approached with compassion, is empowering. It restores agency. Taking responsibility also means learning to tolerate discomfort without discharging it onto others. Instead of reacting impulsively, you practice pausing. Instead of assuming intent, you ask questions. Instead of withdrawing or attacking, you name what is happening inside you. This is not emotional perfection. It is emotional presence. It allows relationships to become spaces of growth rather than reenactment. Communication shifts when responsibility replaces reactivity. You speak from experience rather than accusation. You say, "This is what I feel," rather than, "This is what you did to me." This does not dilute your truth. It grounds it. It invites connection rather than defensiveness. And when the other person cannot meet you there, you gain information, not a verdict on your worth. Another essential boundary is learning to allow others to have their own experience. Many people, especially those who grew up managing other people's emotions, feel compelled to fix, soothe, or explain themselves endlessly. This can look like care, but it often masks anxiety. Allowing someone to feel disappointed, confused, or upset without rushing to repair it is a profound act of respect, both for them and for you. It acknowledges that connection does not require constant emotional management. As you practice boundaries and responsibility, you may notice a shift in the dynamics you attract. Some people will fall away, not because you did something wrong, but because the relationship relied on your lack of limits. This can be painful, even when it is necessary. Letting go of these connections often brings up guilt, doubt, and second-guessing. These feelings do not mean you should go back. They mean you are doing something new. At the same time, relationships that can accommodate your boundaries tend to deepen. They become more honest, more spacious. You are no longer performing or negotiating your worth moment to moment. There is room for disagreement without rupture, for closeness without collapse. This is what emotional safety feels like, not the absence of challenge, but the presence of trust. Boundaries are not static. They evolve as you do. What you tolerate at one stage of healing may feel unacceptable at another. This is not inconsistency. It is growth. Giving yourself permission to update your limits allows your relationships to reflect who you are becoming, not who you had to be. And as this alignment strengthens, the effort it once took to protect yourself begins to soften into something quieter, something steadier, something that feels like standing firmly inside your own life. At the core of lasting relational change is the body's capacity to feel safe in the present moment. This is often overlooked, especially in cultures that privilege insight, explanation, and effort. We are taught to think our way into better relationships, to analyze patterns, to set intentions. While insight matters, it is not sufficient. A body that is chronically braced, vigilant, or shut down will continue to interpret the world through threat, regardless of how much you understand yourself. Healing, therefore, is not just about knowing more, it is about experiencing safety differently. For many people, emotional safety was inconsistent or conditional. As a result, the nervous system learned to stay alert, scanning for cues of abandonment, criticism, or control. This hypervigilance can look like anxiety, overthinking, people-pleasing, or emotional withdrawal. It can also look like attraction to intensity, because intensity feels like aliveness in a system accustomed to tension. When the body does not know calm, it may interpret calm as emptiness. Learning to regulate the nervous system is not about forcing relaxation. It is about building the capacity to stay present with what arises without being overwhelmed or dissociating. This capacity develops slowly, through repeated experiences of noticing sensation and emotion without judgment. It might begin with something as simple as feeling your feet on the ground, noticing your breath without changing it, or placing a hand on your chest during moments of stress. These small acts send a powerful message to the body. You are not alone with this. As regulation becomes more accessible, reactivity decreases. You may notice that situations which once felt urgent now feel manageable. You can tolerate pauses in communication without spiraling. You can sit with uncertainty without immediately filling the space. This does not mean you no longer care. It means your care is no longer fused with fear. The body learns that connection does not require constant activation. One of the most profound shifts that comes with regulation is the ability to distinguish between intuition and trauma responses. When the nervous system is dysregulated, fear can masquerade as instinct. You might feel a strong urge to pull away, pursue, or fix, and interpret that urgency as truth. As the body settles, intuition becomes quieter, clearer, less demanding. It does not shout, it informs. This clarity allows you to make choices that are aligned rather than reactive. Regulation also changes how you experience conflict. Instead of perceiving disagreement as danger, you begin to experience it as information. Your body stays more available, your breath more steady. You can listen without immediately defending, and speak without escalating. This capacity transforms relationships because it creates space for repair. Repair is only possible when both people feel safe enough to stay engaged. It is important to understand that regulation is not a permanent state. No one is calm all the time. The goal is flexibility, not numbness. A regulated nervous system can move through activation and return to baseline. It can feel anger without becoming destructive, sadness without collapsing, joy without fearing its loss. This flexibility is what allows intimacy to deepen without overwhelming the system. As you become more embodied, you may also become more selective. When the body recognizes safety, it becomes less willing to tolerate chronic stress. You may find yourself less drawn to relationships that require you to stay hyperalert. This is not avoidance, it is discernment. The body is no longer mistaking familiarity for compatibility. There can be discomfort in this transition. When you are no longer fueled by adrenaline, you may confront spaces that were previously filled with drama or urgency. These spaces can feel empty at first. They are not empty, they are spacious. Learning to inhabit that spaciousness takes practice. It involves allowing yourself to rest without guilt, to enjoy without scanning for what might go wrong, to be present without performing. Regulation also deepens self-trust. When you know you can handle your internal states, you rely less on external validation. You do not need someone else to regulate you. This does not make you detached, it makes you grounded. From this place, connection becomes a choice rather than a necessity. You engage because you want to, not because you are trying to soothe an unmanageable inner world. This inner steadiness is felt by others. Human are exquisitely sensitive to nervous systems. We respond not just to words, but to tone, pacing, presence. A regulated person feels safer to be around, not because they are perfect, but because they are anchored. They are less likely to escalate, to withdraw suddenly, or to demand reassurance. This creates a relational environment where trust can grow organically. It is also worth noting that regulation is supported by the rhythms of daily life. Sleep, movement, nourishment, and time in environments that feel grounding all contribute to nervous system health. These are not luxuries, they are relational foundations. When you are chronically depleted, your capacity for connection shrinks. Caring for the body is not separate from caring for relationships. It is integral to it. Over time, as regulation becomes more familiar, your internal experience of love changes. Love no longer feels like a spike or a drop. It feels like continuity. It feels like something you can return to, rather than something you have to chase or brace for. The body learns that closeness can coexist with autonomy, that connection does not require self-sacrifice, that safety can be steady rather than dramatic. And from this embodied knowing, your relationships begin to organize themselves around a very different center, one rooted in presence, resilience, and the quiet confidence that comes from being able to stay with yourself no matter what arises.